What up, everyone? DJ Anubis here with you on the Metal Time Radio podcast with another episode of Vintage Cult Cinema with my very special guest, Anthony Jordan from Anthony Jordan Movies and Gaming. Thank you again, sir, for being here today.
No problem. Glad to be on here.
So every once in a while, obviously, I'll pop out one of these videos and go back and revisit what I would consider myself and other people too, a vintage cult film. A lot of times it has to do with films that were initially overlooked by people or even by critics and so on, and became kind of more popular as time went on. And the weird thing about this film was, which of course we're talking about Serenity from 2005, is in a lot of ways, even the series was, because it was on sci-fi for a little while, it was a series called Firefly. And even that series was kind of like a cult thing for a while because not many people knew about it, even though it was pretty advertised pretty well, but it just didn't catch fire like we thought it might. I didn't even know about it really, as far as like having seen it at the time. So my first like introduction really to all of it was around 2008 when I started doing game testing, testing out like graphic cards and stuff. And you know, you would test games on it, and then you'd also test like the DVD players that were installed at the time on computers. And, you know, where I worked, they had like a few selection of movies to choose from. And I remember a friend of mine who I had met there, he was watching a film and testing it out. And I was like, this film looks cool, man. What is this? And he said, oh, it's called Serenity. And I'm like, really? And so my problem at that day was like, as he's testing it out, I'm busy watching the movie on his computer instead of doing my own thing with the game testing at the time. But I made a mental note to say, I got to rent this and check it out. And at the time I did, I think Netflix, when they were still like mailing out DVDs and stuff, I went and rented it and checked it out and immediately fell in love with it. Probably a couple years later, Neko and I went and we actually watched that one season of Firefly, which it got canceled after like 11 episodes. They didn't even finish the 14. But Joss Whedon, who directed this and directed the series, said he wanted to make a movie at least to kind of tie everything off. For you, how much did you know about this movie and series, and when did you first discover it yourself?
I had no clue about the series, and like I've since learned about it and like learned even the cancellation, much like with Tremors, the series, the Sci-Fi Channel did this show no favors by airing the episodes out of order. Yeah. But I found out about it when I saw a trailer for it on TV in 2005 when it was coming out in theaters. Which this movie being vintage is depressing in its own right. I was living with a relative at the time who was in total control of my finances. So even if I had gotten money, I wouldn't have been allowed to spend it in the theater. So I couldn't see this in the theater. And I got it, and I still have the DVD. I don't know where it is. It's the same one you have. I got it used at a flea market, and I was just blown away with it. I thought this is like a fun little unique original sci-fi world. I really loved the mixture of sci-fi and Western aesthetics to it. And when it finished, I'm like, again, completely unaware of the series and that this was meant to more than anything end the story. I'm like, I hope we get a sequel, which we never did.
Yeah, which is really crazy to me because it really left it open to kind of almost like in a Star Trek kind of way, because they didn't necessarily have to follow the same plot from the first film. It could have been one of those things where they kind of just went and discovered different planets or different scenarios because they were like this group of individuals that would travel through space. So basically, and here's the other thing too, is a lot of the actors at the time in this, there's only maybe one that I knew the most, and that was Adam Baldwin, who of course did Full Metal Jacket, did a slew of movies. He was in Chuck, the series. So he's one of the Baldwin boys.
And he was also in this.
Yeah, I didn't see that. But yeah, he's got an extensive filmography of stuff. I mean, I've loved him in a lot of different stuff. He's been probably the most consistent of the Baldwin actors out there. But we have Nathan Fillion as Captain Malcolm Reynolds, who's like a former Alliance soldier, gone mercenary basically, and a thief, basically, as they would call him. Gina Torres, who I do recognize a little bit from Suits. I saw Suits after I'd seen Firefly in this movie, so I kind of knew her face from that. Alan Tudyk, I've known him best from Dodgeball, the comedy with Ben Stiller, which is very funny. Then Morena Baccarin, like back then, no idea who she was, and then of course she started becoming a little bit more famous to me through Deadpool, the movies, and so that's pretty much how I saw there. And then of course Jules State kind of rounds out our characters as far as like the crew, as Kaylee, who's like the mechanic, and she's like a sex obsessed mechanic. We also have Summer Glau, of course. Again, not much. I think this was like her second movie she had done when she did it, and then she went to do the Sarah Connor Chronicles for the Terminator series that they did a few years later. And then, of course, I'm going to butcher his name, but it's Chiwetel Ejiofor. And he plays the operative, which he's like this assassin guy that represents the Federation or the Alliance in this case, tasked with hunting down Summer Glau's character, River Tam. So the plot basically is River Tam is like this young 17-year-old girl who has been experimented on, and she has this ability to like telepathically see things before they happen. And she apparently had seen some things through the Alliance, through like high officials that she should not have seen. And her brother Simon comes and like, you know, sneaks her out of their facility, but with the help, of course, the Serenity, which is the ship of Mal Reynolds and the rest of the crew. And basically, they're kind of like mercenaries for hire. That's basically what it was. Simon paid them to help him get her out of there. But as the story goes along, we start to learn that River gets these like triggers, and she's basically a weapon. She can fight, martial arts skills, weapon skills, whatever. Picks up on languages and coding and stuff like that very easily. But I really love the cast in this. I think they're all really, really good in terms of the characters portraying. So just real quickly, on the left and right, you got Adam Baldwin as Jane. There's Jules State as Kaylee. Alan Tudyk there as Wash. His wife, played by Gina Torres there. And then there's, of course, Mal, Nathan Fillion, and then Simon, the character, and then, of course, Summer Glau is River Tam there on the far right. So for you, when you had first seen this, like, how did you like the story when it was unraveling at first?
I really liked it. I thought it was, the initial scene was just a good hook to get you in, and I even like how they introduced the characters, and even that how they're kind of making money from heist to heist. Like, I thought it was a brilliant little touch that because they're robbing this firm's payroll, that it's something the firm would never report the theft of their own payroll because it would make them look bad. So that was just a nice little touch, and just seeing that they go for targets like that smartly just makes you like the characters even more.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was you had it right. Like at the beginning, is when Simon is going in there to this facility, and the doctors are like experimenting and working on River, and so it seems like a painful thing where they're kind of like messing with her mind, sticking needles or something in her forehead. But he has this like cool thing where he's carrying this like cane, and then he basically lowers it and it shoots up a ball and it just kind of like knocks people out. So then they managed to get away, but what caught me off guard at first was when they're getting away up in that ramp thing, you hear someone say pause and then come back, and then the next thing you know, the operative played by Ejiofor walks through it. And so apparently we were watching like a recording. Like we didn't know it at the time as a viewer until it was to that point, but we thought it was happening in real time. But I really liked that aspect of how he was like be able to rewind it visually and then kind of make it look like we were just watching a recording when we thought we were watching it in real time.
The operative was such a good character.
Oh, yeah. He's one of those characters where, like, you know, you think, and on some level you think, well, he's got a lot of honor. He's very calm, you know, patient. He's very good at martial arts. He's a good fighter. He's an assassin, like they said. But then he does some very atrocious things too, because, you know, he represents the Alliance and his job. Sometimes he doesn't care what the what's the word I'm looking for? He doesn't care like who he has to go through to get the job done, but he'll do it anyway, even if he has to kill kids. So like,
justify the means.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, because like this movie has a lot of interesting points in it with a lot of things. It takes on a lot of things. It's not a very long movie either, but because it does touch on a lot of points, you know, we meet, I can't remember the guy's name, but he's the priest or the reverend that they know on the planet. You know, he's got like his part in everything. Mr. Universe, who's like he's like at that time in the story, like he's like the Mr. YouTuber of the universe. He's the guy that's going to get information out to you if you need it. He's like a researcher, he knows nostalgia stuff. So he has communications to everything. So he's like that mouthpiece. You know, we even get a nice little clip of Sarah Paulson, who I've known from like the American Horror Story franchise series. She gets a little bit of a clip in here. And then we have these things called reavers, which is very interesting as well. These are human beings that are almost reminds me a little bit. Did you ever see Ghost of Mars?
No.
Well, if you ever get a chance to see that, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about, because the way that the reavers basically do up their bodies by, you know, cutting into their skin with like blades and glass or whatever, and how vicious and violent they are, reminds me a little bit of these characters from Ghost of Mars.
They're basically humans that have lost all inhibitions and they just act on their most violent impulses.
Right. Yeah. Like they'll either kill and consume you, or they'll rape the women, and they're just, it's a really grotesque thing. So obviously, you know, River and Simon are on the Serenity, and they end up going to a port because at some point they're, you know, Mal's like, you know, if you want to get off, you know, get off here. Don't have to stay with us, because they go on that heist on that one planet where they actually run into some reavers, and they use River as a way to see something before it happens, because there's actually a guy there that they have under gunpoint who has his own gun, and River catches it and says, yeah. You know, so she stops him from like shooting any of them. So it's basically Mal's the kind of guy that's going to use whatever he can to his advantage to get money. But they end up running into some reavers there a little bit. And he kind of learned also there that, you know, some people will look at it badly and others won't. But Mal's like, there's one point where one of the townsfolk is trying to jump onto their little mini ship to get, you know, to leave because of the reaver attack. And he gets caught up by the reavers. And so Mal just like shoots him to put him out of his misery before he's tortured to death. So you kind of learn about the personalities of all of them and how they operate with one another.
It should be noted to the guy that jumped off, they were all told to go into the vault and take shelter.
Yeah, he was told to lock themselves in the vault. Guy didn't want to, and Mao's like, "We don't have the room for you. It's going to weigh this little machine down." It's kind of like a land speeder almost, but
it was called
anyway,
the Mule.
The Mule. Yeah. So obviously, on this other planet, Mao is going to dump off Simon and River. That was the plan, and then all of a sudden, she sees like this. River sees like this TV screen with all these like animated octopuses and Japanese looking characters, and she just flips a switch. She starts like kicking people's asses in the bar and beating up on people, including Jane, and almost getting to Mao with the gun until Simon says some specific words that like knocks her out. And that's when they kind of unveil that River is like a weapon of sorts from the Alliance, and now it's pissed off Jane, and he's worried about the damage she can do to them on the ship. And again, like I'll ask you, like, how did you feel about the unveiling of the plot twist with her?
Oh, I really liked it because I even remember the first time watching this, I'm like wondering, okay, what else did they do to her that's so special about her? And then when they showed that, I'm like, okay, they turned her into like some kind of super weapon, which makes even more sense why they have to get her back. Because I get it. This is, you get these kids, brainwash them, experiment on them, condition them. Then you drop a handful into a hostile area, set out the trigger, and whether they live or not is irrelevant because they're going to do so much damage that all you have to do is send in a cleanup crew.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it's a nice little twist with the character, but it also leads to a lot of concern for the crew. Not all of them, obviously. Jane's like the biggest one that has like the biggest problem with her, but mainly because he got his ass kicked. But they after they're on the planet, that's kind of like how the operative got her to be weeded out. They needed to figure out how to find them. So he basically put that message out, which was covered underneath the animation. And so that's how he's able to find out where she was so they can start tracking her. And so obviously the operative, we didn't get this message from a girl named Ainara, played by Morena Baccarin, who's like a former lover of Mao or whatever, friend. And she's on like some distant planet where it's more serene and relaxed spirituality or whatever.
Kind of monastery.
Yeah. And so, she calls Mao saying that she needs help with like a local issue, but ends up basically Mao figures out that it's a trap. He says, yeah, this is definitely a trap, but we're going to go. Because he cares about this girl, he pretends he doesn't, but he does. He likes her a lot, but they had a lot of fighting amongst themselves at one point. So they go to the planet. That's where he get his first run-in with the operative, and it doesn't go well for him initially because, like I said, the operative has a lot of skills. It was very well played by the actor, and I was kind of amazed at how good his martial arts was in this. I don't know how much he knows in real life or if it was just like a training thing or whatever, but he did a really good job in the fight scenes and all that in the choreography.
My favorite like personality touch is how like right before he kills someone, he'll like try to like comfort them, like, no, this is nothing to be ashamed of. This is a good death.
Yeah, he does that to the doctor from the beginning, who was basically at fault for letting a River get away. So he hits this like nerve in the back of your back with his fingers, and that's going to come into play later. But he does that to the doctor. The doctor kind of is paralyzed, and he starts to kind of fall forward, and so he does his things like, this is a good death, and he holds his sword as the guy falls on it, so you fall on your own sword. And but like you said, he's very calm about it. He's not like an asshole. Yeah, I mean, he's probably condescending in some ways, but it's like he's just so calm about it. He's like, yeah, it's good for you. This is good. This is good. This is better.
Truthfully, what he's doing to them is probably better than what the Alliance officials would have done.
Right. Yeah. There is another moment also when they're on the planet of the monastery where once the operative first shows up, they kind of, him and Mal kind of have this back and forth, like, I don't want to really hurt you. We're not here to fight. I just want River, because he's trying to get his property back, I guess. But I forget what the operative says. Like Mal asks him a question, and he says something like, no. And then just quickly, Mal pulls his gun and shoots him, even though he's got body armor. The operative does. It was so quick. I was like, wow. I was like, this is almost like Doc Holliday fast. Like, I didn't even expect that so fast. But he's like, he shoots him and he tries to get away. But they get into a fight. And if not for Ainara having like some sort of flash bomb incense, I guess, they probably would have been caught, but they were able to get away and go on to avoid them for a little bit longer. Eventually, like I said, they talked to Mr. Universe about that's how to discover the coding underneath the animation, which sent River into that fighting sequence when she just flips the switch.
Before she went into the sequence, she said Miranda, and they're trying to figure out whatever that is.
Yeah, and of course, now that they know that she can be like a ticking time bomb, they lock her in handcuffs on the ship. And, Jane, again, is not comfortable with it. He's kind of like this. He's like the main security soldier guy in the group, as far as the heavy, but he has a lot of attitude and stuff. So he tries to go and handle her himself. Like, he doesn't want to take chances, but she outsmarts him because, again, she can see in your head, like, a few seconds before it even happens, what you're going to try to do. So she gets the better of Jane and gets out, and that's when she pretty much takes the ship and decides, she finds on the GPS there, like the planet Miranda, which has been erased off the star maps for a reason. And now we get like this deeper secret that we're going to start unraveling that ties in a lot of the Alliance to the planet, to the Reavers, and everything in between. How did you feel about that aspect when they started like focusing on that?
Oh, I was like totally dialed in by this point, because it's like, okay, you set up a good mystery. Now that you're answering it, and it paces really well, where the movie just doesn't feel like it's spinning its wheels at any point.
Yeah, and that's good because it doesn't have any lulls. And like, again, like it's not a super long film, but it does throw like a lot of different characters and stuff like that at you. But I like how that Joss is able to balance it all. So it's like, who each character is, what they're about, what they're like, their mannerisms. And then, of course, you got these different story plot lines. You got the Alliance, you got the crew of the Serenity, and now you've got Miranda and the Reavers. And so I like that he's able to, he doesn't need like 2.5 hours to give you all that. He can do it all in that time span and still not hurt the movie at all. But so they figure out, they end up trying to go back to that planet where the priest is, and it's just like friends of theirs that they've known a while. It's kind of like a safe haven for him whenever they need to like just unwind or chill out for a while from whatever they're doing in their thievery. But when they come back, it's been annihilated. Like, the town's been blown up and fire and ash everywhere and bodies of kids and stuff like that. And even the priest is half alive when Mal finds him. Obviously, he's shaken by, obviously the priest and him kind of butted heads because they have different philosophies about how to live your life and what you should be doing. But I do like what he says towards him before he dies is like, I don't care what you believe in, just believe in something. And I like that. I like that last dialogue that he has. And it kind of just sets off this like thing in Mao's mind where normally he wouldn't get mixed up in things. He really dislikes the alliance. He dislikes how the war ended and what it did to him just in terms of losing people and stuff like that. But, you know, he just flips a switch and he, you know, gets very cold to a lot of his crew. Like they're all kind of worried because he's like, okay, I need you to take 6 of the bodies, throw them up on the ship, start getting some paint, put that cannon up there. And at first, no one, I don't even know what's going on. Like I'm listening to it and watching. I'm like, what is he doing? And of course, the crew, who are all, some of it, most are ex-military, and they're just kind of like, what are you doing? We don't do this to people we care about. He's like, I need you to do this because we got to go figure this out. Miranda means something. And they've done this. They've killed kids and women and children, you know, like there's a reason for this. We need to figure this out. But so he just becomes cold. He's like, he becomes that captain leader that has to give the harsh order to do something, even if it doesn't feel right to the rest of his crew. So obviously what they end up doing is disguising the Serenity to look like a Reaver craft, which the Reavers, much like how their bodies are, will reshape their ships with blood and bodies and like paint and just make it look horrific. How did you feel about that when you saw like how the Reavers were in terms of how they looked and how they did their ships and stuff?
I like that, and I like the fact that they make their ships look like as much of an abomination as they are. Even just seeing the ship, like, you know, you're in trouble.
And the funny thing is that, you know, they're not dumb, like they're crazy, but they're not dumb. And so like you can tell that they, with all the ships they had, and like, because obviously to get to Miranda, there's like this big open dead space where apparently the Reavers just hang out. It's like their area. They just wait for either passing ships to come by or you know, they're guarding something. It's almost like they knew they needed to guard Miranda, the planet, for some reason. We just don't know why. But maybe it's because of where they initially came from. I don't know. But you can tell that they kind of know what they're doing. They have some very large ships they take over. They can fly them. They, even when they attack towns on planets, they are easily, like, they act crazy, but they can still behave in a way that's like sharp enough to know how to fly a spaceship.
They still have all their intelligence. They're just consumed with the urge to do the most horrific acts.
Right. And so Serenity, you know, the crew, they go and they try to sneak past, which they do when they're going towards the planet to get by it. And at first it gets a little creepy because it's all dark and they're trying to go quietly through this, like, I would say it's like a graveyard, but they're all just sitting there. They're like, it's not really a graveyard. You can hear the communications of the Reavers on the intercom and their weird, like, grotesque voices or whatever they're saying. But once they get to the planet, this is where kind of like we get introduced to everything that happened and why, which is the great reveal, basically. And as they get down there, initially it was a terraforming planet that supposedly was not breathable. Like they had said that you couldn't be there because something failed and it's not healthy for anyone to be down there. So as they're down there, they find out that they can breathe because their meters are telling them everything's fine. So then they start finding people that were not really totally dead. I won't say, well, they are dead, but they weren't like skeleton. Like they still had some skin on them. So it was really kind of weird. So I don't know. Did they ever state in the movie like how long it was between that and when the Reavers became what they were?
It was kind of like in tandem because they find out when they get to first we find out the not just dead, but it's just they didn't fall. They just laid down. They stopped doing anything. into
Star
sky on the spot.
Yeah.
We find out it was because of this chemical they introduced in the atmosphere that's supposed to make the population passive, but it turned a good portion of the population statistically violent. So I'm guessing from the context that it both kind of happened in tandem.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it happened like, because there's some dreams that River had when she was younger that it's almost like she was there. But I don't know if that's just like a correlation of her inserting herself into those dreams or what. But I'm just wondering from the time that those events happen to modern day when they are on that ship, like, are we talking like a year since that happened? Are we talking like 5 years? Like, I just don't really know the timeline of when that event took place on the planet to when they came back to it on that ship. So, but needless to say, like you said, they put some sort of chemical into the filters of the planet, and the idea was to keep people from being aggressive to one another and just kind of be. It's almost like Demolition Man, everyone's kosher with one another. There's no violence, nothing, but it made a good portion of the population so passive that they just didn't care about anything. They didn't care about working. Didn't care about mating. They would just lay down and sleep. It just was really bad. And then, of course, as we see Sarah Paulson's character on the visual thing, she starts saying that there's like a smaller percentage that it had the opposite effect, and it made them uber aggressive and made them very violent to rape and kill. And of course, there's like a crazy scene that you don't quite see totally when she's attacked before she dies. On the video of like she's explaining that the Alliance and the planet were responsible for creating the Reavers, which are now like a parasite or like an infection in the universe that they're in that has caused all these problems with killing and hurting people. But the Alliance clearly wanted to try to bury that. They don't want anybody to know about this because it would make them look bad because they've been doing experiments on people. It seems to be a bad thing with them. So once they've figured all that out, they decide they're going to go back to Mr. Universe, take the recording and have it broadcasted to expose the Alliance. Now, at this point, as they're going to come back through the Reaver convoy out there, they understand that they're going to probably run into the operative back at Mr. Universe's location. And of course, the operative has his own convoy of ships and stuff like that waiting for Mal and them to come through because they realize he's going to come back and try to expose the entire Alliance. It's basically the last straw. And this is probably one of my favorite scenes because it's really showing you. It's kind of like a death wish, but at the same time, very smart of what Mal does. And they decide they're going to antagonize the Reavers as they come back through so that they chase them to where the location is of Mr. Universe because they know that once they come through, the Alliance is going to be waiting for them, but the Alliance doesn't know that they're going to be tailing a bunch of Reaver ships behind them. So whenever you see them going to warp speed or whatever it is, the Serenity comes through and the operative, he's all cocky. He's like, he's not going to change the course. What an idiot. He's like basically mocking him. And then all of a sudden you just see all these Reaver ships come through and his face just goes white. Like for a black guy. What's that?
But he's like, just shoot at anything.
Oh, yeah, he's like, just shoot the Reavers. Like somebody fire. And it just becomes like a big Star Wars thing. It's like just things firing at one another, ships crashing into one another. It's just crazy what's going on. But then they manage to fly through, washes their pilot, and he's like, I'm like a leaf on the wind, he's like flying through and avoiding being hit and shot. But there's one Reaver ship chasing him back to that planet that Mr. Universe is on. And so when they do finally crash land there, you get another shock in the movie. Like, I mean, this is gonna be spoilers for anybody who doesn't want them. Cut out now, please. I probably should have cut out a while ago if you haven't seen it, but this is an older movie, so I'm not too worried about that. But once they've crash landed into a hangar, everyone's okay. But then all of a sudden, as Wash is like kind of like, I'm a leaf on the wind or whatever, a harpoon from the Reaver ship comes through the window and impales him.
That was a shocker.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's probably the only thing about the movie that is kind of a bummer, because you lost the priest and you lost Mr. Universe because they were eventually killed by the operative, but Wash is the only one of the crew that basically lost his life, and of course he was married to Zoe, who is played by Gina Torres, his wife. So she doesn't get long to like try to mourn his death. Like she's both like a wife and a former military girl. So she has to kind of like try to flip the switch as quick as she can because the Reavers are coming. And so they get barricaded into a certain part of the station there. And her objective is to tell Mal, like, take the recording and go up and get this handled, and then we'll hold off the Reavers. And so they're trying to hold off this attack, and they're going through all their shit down there while Mal goes up to try to broadcast the recording, but then the operative somehow sneaks in a different way because he managed to like jet out of his ship before it blew up. And so he's down there and they get into their fight, and I'll let you go ahead and explain the ending and how it played out. I'll let you talk a little bit.
They get into their fight, and it's like clear Mal is no match for the operative. But unbeknownst to anyone, us, the audience, the operative, Mal has kind of an unintentional secret weapon because he's trying to get to this terminal where he can broadcast the footage and show the universe, this is what happened, this is where the Reavers come from. And we finally see him do that nerve strike, and Mal goes rigid, and he does his thing again, and like Mal hits him in the throat, and he brings up, well, back during the war, some shrapnel ripped out that nerve cluster. And rather than killing him, he wedges him into this railing with the sword while this is going on. The rest of the crew is making a stand, and they go to jump in this corridor. But because the door gets damaged, it has to be shut on the outside. So River jumps out and goes to town on the Reavers while this is going on. Mal tells him, like, this isn't a bad thing. I'm about to show you what you've always wanted, a world free of sin. And he plays the footage, and you just see, like, on the operative's face, like, his entire belief system just completely crumble and shatter. And he doesn't kill him. He just walks off, which pays off for them, because when the doors open, River's there, all the Reavers are dead, and the Alliance military comes in, and they're paging the, like, operative, like, what should we do? What should we do? And he just gives the stand down order.
Yeah, and that's something that maybe I'll ask you how you felt about that particular scene when he's watching the recording, because like you said, Mal's like, now you're going to see a world without sin. A part of me was wondering if the operative even knew the truth. Like, a lot of times they call the operative a believer, which means he was a believer in the Alliance. It means he believes in whatever they're telling him because he represents them as a company. But a part of me also thinks that he didn't care what the truth was. He just wanted it to be right. How did you feel about it? Did you think he knew already what happened on that planet, or that he just was actually kind of surprised by what did happen?
Judging by his reaction, I don't think he knew.
Yeah, that's how I felt.
He clearly had a certain level of security clearance, but there was clearly also a lot of stuff they just were not telling him.
Yeah, and again, I think that's sort of like why he had this stand down order at the end, because I think for one, Mao could have killed him, but he didn't. So that kind of tells you a little bit about Mao's character. He wasn't going about to kill this guy regardless, because I think he actually did want him to see what the truth actually was. And then, of course, I think the operative, despite still kind of being who he was, he also had a kind of a change of heart, because even towards the end, when he says his final goodbyes to Mao, he's kind of like, the Alliance won't stop coming after you. They won't send me. They'll just send somebody else. But you can kind of tell the operative is like, at least deep down, he looks like he's just not. He's questioning his own faith within the Alliance himself, because he doesn't even know what they're going to do with him. They might kill him. He doesn't even know it.
I get the feeling the way that scene was framed. Had this gotten a sequel, or had it been successful enough for a revival series, that the operative would have kind of become a reoccurring semi-hostile ally.
Yeah.
Like they would never have been friends. They would have still been at each other's throats, but he would have still from time to time showed up and helped them out.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you probably would have seen him he's probably one of those guys that if the Alliance had been chasing the crew around for a while, if they got into a tight bind, you might get like this. It's almost like the Han Solo save on Luke Skywalker in Star Wars when you're not expecting it, but instead of revealing so much that hey, it's me, they'd be like, where'd that gunfire come from? And then you just kind of get this look of a craft or from a guy's sniper or whatever, and it'd be the operative sitting there and just kind of staying quiet.
Or another one I could picture, I think we would have absolutely gotten an episode where him and Mal wound up stranded on a planet together and they had to work together to survive.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, like you said, there's probably this sort of unwritten respect, even though Mal did tell him, if I ever see you again, I'm going to kill you. Mainly because Mal's pissed off about what he did to that priest and the people on that planet. But there is also just this understanding, because again, he could have just shot him dead right there and been done with it. But he doesnn't do it. He just he's like, all right, I saved you and you saved us, because they would have been dead if he gave the order to kill him. So, all right. Well, yeah, that's basically it. I mean, you get basically some cut shots towards the end where they're back on the ship fixing it, taking the stuff off that they had disguised it with. Kaylee was infatuated with Simon, so they ended up kind of hooking up on a ship. And again, River, despite the stuff that she possesses, both skill-wise and her telepathy or whatever, she's still kind of innocent, because she's almost curious about a lot of things, kid-like, so she did a really good job with that role. Summer did. So she's very just curious in general. So she's very kid-like. And then, of course, you get the ending there. Einar sort of just decides she's going to stick around a little bit with them. So again, if you were right, they would have done a sequel. We probably would have seen her kind of palling around with them this time instead of going back to her home planet. But as Mal gets into the cockpit of the ship to fly off the planet, it's raining. He's talking to somebody, and of course it's River, who's in the other seat, pilot seat, and she starts actually kind of lifting the ship off. So again, she's very quick with learning how to deal with electronics and codes and stuff. So she can kind of pick up fast on stuff. But they just had this little back and forth, a little bit of talk.
I love the back and forth, because he's like, you know what I'm about to say, don't you? And she's like, yeah, I do, but I want to hear you say it.
Yeah. And she's very much interested, or because obviously they've had a butting of heads early on, but now they're kind of they are like family. That was kind of the thing where Kaylee was always saying, we can't just dump him off. We can bring him in as one of us, our families. Because that's kind of how she said. Like I said, a lot of these characters are very close, but Mao is one of those people that is very standoffish for whatever reason, and that kind of led to his leaving Anara behind the first time. But when she says that she'll maybe hang around, he's like, good answer. So he's starting to open up a little bit, even to River and stuff like that. So that, like you said, that's a really good scene. And then of course you get those funny moments at the very end when the piece of the ship flies off and he's like, what was that?
This one did have a lot of just good little laughs throughout the film. Even earlier on when they're getting ready to do the heist and he stops Jane from bringing all the guns and the grenades. How many guns you have? You only got the two hands. And when they're being chased by the Reaver craft and he throws the one grenade, it'd be awfully nice if I had some extra grenades right about now.
Yeah. I will say that one scene though, I don't know if I can believe that, because again, they managed to get a small harpoon into his leg for Jane when they're on the mule. And he's holding on to the mule while the ship behind him, which is much larger, is pulling him with
His
that.
leg should have been gone.
Yeah, it would have been a toast. But again, we're for the sake of fun. They made it believable enough, I guess, for us. But your final thoughts and rating from 1 to 10 on Serenity?
Very underrated sci-fi gem. Granted, some of the CG hasn't aged the best, but the story's good. The characters are good. This film is perfectly cast. Every actor just fits so naturally in the role. And I'm gonna, just for how underrated it is, and that you still don't hear a lot of people talk about this to this day. I was glad when you mentioned doing this one, because I was like, I haven't seen that in a while. I'm about due, so I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, definitely very underrated. And again, like you said, as far as sci-fi film, it's very original. And plus, as you said earlier, you don't have to watch the series to know what's going on in this film. They do a good job of just giving you a standalone story, even though it is kind of a continuation of characters. But the story itself is its own. Even the operative is a new character that was introduced in the film. So you won't see him in the series itself. But fantastic, very underrated, very entertaining. I agree with you. It's a 10 out of 10. More people should know about it. Definitely a cult classic because, again, no one really talks about it. No one brings it up. But it's certainly up there in terms of sci-fi movies and action. Do you have anything coming up? Are you getting back into your stuff yet or no?
Yeah, I'm getting back into it. I just don't have any set date. But tomorrow I forget which time it's going to be, but I will be on Entertainment Headquarters, Kevin Lambert's channel, discussing The Sopranos.
Oh, nice. Are you going to be on with the girl too, or
yeah? It's going to be all three of us, and this is actually my first time watching the show.
Oh, that's going to be fun. I'd be curious. Neko really liked it. I don't. She won't be on it, obviously, but she really enjoyed that series. I caught a few episodes here and there. I never watched the whole thing, but
it was cool for me. Was there was one episode where they showed this building in the background, and it's in Asbury Park, New Jersey. That's the convention center. And I, for a few months, lived literally right across the street from that building.
Oh, nice.
So seeing that, I was right there. I was across the street, just over there.
That's crazy. Yeah, I think I was there at the convention center back in 2000 for the March Meltdown Festival. That was a while ago, though. But yeah, Asbury Park. Yeah, I know that place very well.
Interesting little town, ain't it?
Yeah, well, certainly is.
I got a friend in Chicago. I told him I lived there. He's like, I didn't know you lived in the hood.
Well, the other thing is Asbury Park, So, and this is just, and you probably would know this. This is kind of like a side to everything we're talking about, but so Jaws obviously is sort of based off uh, the attacks in 1916, where it started on the East Coast and then went up to Matawan Creek, and that's something that gets mentioned in the movie. It's something also that Peter Benchley had used as sort of like a staple to make the story that he wrote. But one of the attacks actually happened off the coast of Asbury Park. So that's a little tidbit that I knew even before going up there for the festival. But very interesting city for sure.
Yeah.
So for me, later tonight, Mr. Tony and I are going to get back to the Ghouls of Midnight. I've chosen a movie from this year called The Yeti. And then he's chosen a movie called Body Cam from this year. So we'll be reviewing those tonight. Tomorrow, I'll be with Kevin Lambert, but for a different thing. I'll be on there for the Into the Darkness to talk about the Sinister movies 1 and 2. And then Saturday, I will be with him again to do the Retro Classic Movie Show with him on his channel as we review Jean-Claude Van Damme's Double Impact. So those are pretty much what's on the horizon for me as we speak. Anthony, thank you for joining me today again. I appreciate it as always. Definitely have to get back with you to do some more of the kaiju stuff. I still got a bunch of stuff I got to go through with all you guys with that. But as I always do on this show, as we close it out, I'm going to give you a little bit of a 2-minute montage of the movie we just reviewed. You'll see a few scenes from that. So enjoy, everybody. See you next time on the Metal Time Radio podcast. This is Vintage Cult Cinema.